Hello, and welcome to another episode of This Is Our Year. I'm your host, Michael Kurland. Joining me, as always, is my partner in crime, Dougie Fresh. Douglas, how are you doing today?
Aloha, Mike. I hear you're joining us from Hawaii. Is that correct?
I am joining you from Hawaii, and this is the second time I'm doing this podcast from a hotel room. This is the first time that I'm doing this podcast from a hotel room with absolutely no visual. So I am flying blind right now, but I can do this. I can do this with just voice. That's how talented I am. So,
yeah.
Dougie, how we doing?
We're pretending it's an old school podcast, right? No video.
Exactly.
This is wild.
Yeah,
wild.
We can just talk to each other. So how are we doing today, Douglas? What's going on?
Oh man, we're doing better than the Mets pitching staff, right? I don't think you're telling me you weren't watching the game. We just lost another starter. But before we get into that, I do have a beer for you today.
Yeah, what are you drinking?
And,
tell the audience what you're drinking.
I'm gonna give a little shout out to California.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
Remember, like 10, 15 years ago, the local watering hole added this to their tap lineup, and I wore it out for a few years. Had some fuzzy nights with Lagunitas IPA.
Very nice. And they're based out of San Diego, correct?
I thought it was a little farther north, but yeah, true that. And obviously they're all over the country. They have been. This isn't like a very obscure beer, but I thought I saw a sampler pack again. Thought I'd give them a shout out.
Very nice.
I have the flagship, of course, but we also have a Hazy Wonder.
Very nice.
For those of you who
that'll be the back half.
The citrus.
That'll be the back half.
Yeah. That's gonna be the draft beer.
Yes, exactly.
That's gonna be the DJ beer, and I've been repping way too many IPAs, but I couldn't help myself this week. So
hey, we just lost Carrasco, so you got to drink to that, right?
Yeah, I mean it looks like it, right? No report as of us going on air. And by the way, it is Wednesday, June 22nd, coming to you live on tape.
Very nice.
And so cheers, everybody.
Cheers. I'm having my, it's still 11 a.m. out here, so I'm having my Kona coffee to start the day.
Very nice. And what's the occasion? Are you on vacation yet again?
This is our 1 year anniversary vacation. Yeah. Our honeymoon was kind of botched a little bit from COVID. We did the best we could, but it wasn't ideal. So we headed over to Maui, and she's 5 months pregnant. So we're doing a lot of pregnancy activities. So which is a lot of eating. So I've gained like 5 pounds already. I've been here for like 2 days, but I'm okay.
Oh man! So, all right, is that like Lamaze? What other activities?
I'm sorry. What was that? I'm definitely having tech.
Wait, is that like Lamaze? Like what other activities?
We did a photo shoot yesterday. We did a walk. We did a massage, and we went to dinner. Yeah, and we went to the pool. So. Lots of really tame stuff. I still have no drinks for 2 months. 2 month anniversary of no drinks is actually on Friday. Yeah, it'll be Friday. It'll be 2 months of straight no alcohol. So pretty happy with that.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, man. And
congrats. I'm sure you're feeling good.
I feel good. I'm sleeping good. But I'll tell you, man, like the anxiety has come back. It's a different kind of anxiety, right? It's like the stuff that you have to like kind of meditate through. So I've been meditating a lot more, which is good for the soul. So yeah, on a good trajectory. But yeah,
nice.
All's good, man. All's good. So let's.
Always tough when you can't drink through the anxiety.
Oh, or when you can't just numb it out, right?
I know that well.
Yeah, I don't want to feel this anymore. Here's a bunch of them.
Yeah, there are other ways to do that for sure. Yeah. But yeah, let's get to it. You want to start with the Mets? Or?
Yeah, man. You've been watching the game. Let's talk. What did you see today? What
oh man, so. They are actually they are fighting back. It's 5-3 in the eighth currently. They have a runner on. They got bombed last night though. I don't know if you saw.
I saw the score. I saw Trevor started. What are you going to do? Houston's a great team. Yeah,
this Yordan Alvarez, man, is insane player. He has 2 bombs today
and one yesterday.
And yeah, I believe so. I actually didn't watch yesterday's game. I only caught the replay, like the quick replay. I was out, but they haven't won a game in Houston since 2011, apparently.
Yeah, well, we haven't played a lot of games in Houston either, though.
No, it's only a couple series, but I mean, that kind of jumps out to you. Overall, though, they took care of business against Miami last weekend. I don't know if you saw those games.
I did.
But that was encouraging.
I did. I saw those games. The only game that we lost, I texted you, and I pinned that one on Buck. He hasn't made a lot of bad decisions this year, but he had Bassett at 97 pitches through 6. We went up 1-0, and he didn't even have anyone warming in the pen, and he let him come out for the 7th. And gave up 2 little seeing eye singles, and we had first and second, nobody out, and then he walked. The third guy was up to 109 pitches through that sequence, and then he brought Lugo in, and that's when Lugo gave up the bomb, the grand slam to the kid. So I just didn't understand why, Bassett. I could see if Bassett had mowed him down in the 6th, maybe sticking with him to the 7th, but he struggled to get through that 6th. He was laboring.
Yeah, he was fighting.
He was bending over, sucking wind. Like, he definitely. I almost thought he was hurt a couple times. He was, grabbing his knees and trying to focus to get through that inning. So,
yeah, it's kind of like a throwback Terry Collins complaint, right? Like I especially the point you made about not having anyone in the pen ready going into the 7th. I mean, this is 2022. I didn't get that at all.
Yeah.
Especially with how well like Ottavino has been pitching well. Drew Smith, obviously. So, Lugo gave one up. He's not had a great year. We talked about this over and over. That's one of their biggest needs, right?
Yeah.
Is bullpen help?
When I saw that game go down, I revisited our conversation from last week, and I was like, I'm fully on board with the bullpen arm first. We don't need an extra bat. We lead the league in offense, on every offensive category except for home runs, I believe. And we don't need another bat as bad as we need another bullpen arm. We need a power arm out there, a guy that can just, maybe it's Trevor May if he comes back healthy. But I mean, there's a couple of closers out there on shitty teams. I think Melanson is on Arizona, right? That's a guy that's got.
Yeah, Mark Melanson. You could talk Chafin at Detroit.
Oh, I love that guy. Power lefty. We could use a power lefty. And I think Robertson is having a resurgence as well.
Yes, guy thank you.
Who knows how to pitch in New York? So in the playoffs.
Yep, and I believe he's on the Cubs. So
yeah, they're going nowhere fast. I'm so happy that Marcus Stroman signed with that team. Enjoy the rest of that contract, Marcus, pal. So.
Yeah, so they need help. I saw Tim. I think it was. I always get Tim Healy and Tim Britton mixed up, so I apologize, guys. But one of them was breaking down how Lugo's just not getting the swings and misses this year.
Yeah, he looks off, man. I think that tear in his UCL is probably starting to catch up with him. I don't know if he's going to make it through the whole year. His fastball is definitely down. Curveball, slider, not as much break as it used to have. So there's
So, I mean, we'll see with this Carrasco news. If he's really down, I think they have to run out and just find a stopgap.
Well, you're going to probably see your guy that you were talking about a couple of shows ago, Gray, right? What was his name?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Connor Gray. I actually haven't checked his stats lately. I know Jose Buto, who is on the 40-man, got lit up the other night, so I don't know if he's an option. They have Trevor Cahill.
Yeah. And Max is right around the corner as well.
Yeah, it's rough stuff.
Max pitched last night, right?
It's not all bad news, right? Scherzer struck out 6 in 3.1 last night. Again, seems like he's raring to go
in Binghamton, but I mean, whatever. He just needs reps. It doesn't matter who he's pitching against at this point. So if we can get him back in the next turn around the rotation, that would be real helpful. We go back against the Marlins in Miami in a couple of days, so I think we can hopefully take 2 out of 3 from those guys. So,
I mean, I think they have to go up against Alcantara again, who's just nasty. But
we do.
Miami's beatable. And I don't know if you noticed, but do you know who caught Max last night?
I would assume it was Pedro.
No, James McCann is on his way back too.
Oh, very nice.
And they're saying both him and McNeil should be ready by Friday.
That is great news. That's great news. That's going to help just a little bit more.
Yeah. So
I mean, they have just
the news isn't all bad.
Yeah, they finally realized that Mazika's not worth putting into a major league game. Nito's been playing about every game. So
I know, and he's been doing fine.
It's 230. If that guy hits 230 all year, I will eat my shirt for shitting on his batting stance and everything that came with it. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw him gun. I forget who he gunned down, but he made a hell of a
throw. He threw him from his knees. Yeah, he threw that guy out from his knees. That was quite a nice strike him out, throw him out. I forget who it was as well, but was it Chisholm? I think it was.
No, you have somebody like that. I mean, look, it seems like that Miami is always gives the Mets fits with, especially with guys like that, Chisholm and Rojas, and so we'll see. But it would be nice if they could pull this out. I just saw today pull this out. I just saw our old friend Rafael Montero shut the door on that. So looks like a 2-game losing streak here.
That's all right.
Not a great start.
Houston was always going to be tough. I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. So, and let's tie up some other loose ends. Game 4 tonight, NHL Stanley Cup playoff final.
Yeah.
Tampa looks like they came back to life at home. Game 3.
They did.
Played really well. Turned the tables on Colorado.
They smacked him around.
Darcy Kemper looked like the goalie that he actually is. They got to him. They had him out. So if they can make that a norm, this could be a series. Maybe it's a home.
Yeah.
So
I'm in my heart I'm rooting for the Avs because I just don't want to see Tampa win at all. But I'm hoping this series goes long. It's been a lot of fun to watch. Again, if you're a casual fan, if you don't even care about the NHL, but you're fiending for something because there's no basketball, check it out. These games have been a lot of fun. Both these teams can score, and let's go 7, right? Why not?
Let's go 7. And there was a little bit of NHL news today. Paul Maurice goes down to Florida to take over for Andrew Brunette, who took over for Joe Quenneville. Brunette gets
another retread.
Brunette gets a raw deal, man. That guy came in and won the President's.
Oh, I know, right?
Was the President's Cup with them? Best record in the league. Took over mid-year and all that chaos.
He was Jack Adams finalist.
Yep. And they said maybe we'll find a place for the organization.
Yeah, off, right?
Exactly. Maybe he'll come sit on the bench with Lampert. That would be pretty awesome.
Oh, dude, yeah, sign me up. But is it his fault they just forgot how to score against the Lightning in round 2? I don't know if you put that on him, but I guess Maurice went back in the game, right?
Ready-made situation. Walked in, ready-made situation. What's he got to do there? Just take him over the top. So he's
real quick. What was? Oh, go ahead.
He's actually never won a cup though. He's like the most winningest coach that's never won a cup, I believe.
He is, and that's good segue. Real quick, what was his first head coaching job in the NHL?
Come on, bro. The Hartford Whalers. Boom.
Shout out to Connecticut.
That's right.
The
Whale. Cool. So I think.
Hey.
Go ahead.
No, congrats to Igor. Igor got the Vezina. I don't know if you saw that.
Yes.
I guess well deserved. That's the most I'll say about that.
Yep. I think Connor McDavid's still the best player on the planet, even though, Austin Matthews won the Hart. I think goals are sexy, and being an all around great player is a B on the list. So shout out to all, not Matthews.
Yeah, they can't.
He's got work to do on his image. That forehead and that mustache. Come on, buddy. You can do better than that.
Hey, I thought you liked that look. That's the Negosic.
Yeah. No good. No, thank you.
No.
No.
All right, well, fair enough. Yeah, go ahead.
So we got our first guest ever, Doug. Someone actually decided that it would be a good idea to come on our podcast and join us. So for all you guys out there, we're going to talk some Knicks and Nets draft, mostly Knicks draft because the Nets don't have any picks. Talk a little NBA basketball with DJ Zullo, a pseudo draft expert on Twitter. If you guys want to check him out, his Twitter handle is @ace_Zullo. That's ACE_ZULLO. He's got all the insights. I definitely follow him to get all of my NBA draft insider news. So DJ, welcome to the show.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I've just been listening in. You guys have some good rapport. I've been a fan of the show for a little bit, so it's
man,
nice to be
always
on.
great to meet a listener. So yeah, thanks for jumping on, dude.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys, we go back a little bit. We go back a little bit to the fantasy baseball years back in the early 2000s. So it's nice to catch up.
Yeah,
with you guys
we've
again.
all somehow found our way onto sports, sports commentating, podcasting, Twittering. So I like it. We turned that fantasy fandom into something.
It's wild, man.
There you go.
So let's start with Kyrie. What the hell's going on?
Listen, in my opinion, this is, and we kind of talked a little bit off air about this. I think that this is a big power play on Kyrie's part. He wants a contract that's going to pay him as much as the Nets can pay him. The Nets obviously don't want to give him that because of the issues you guys know about. He's not reliable. And there's, I'm sure, some questions about how he's going to age into the contract, putting the reliability thing aside. But in the end, in my opinion, that's what this is. I don't see that there's a lot of teams that can make a credible trade offer for him. There's been talk about the Lakers, but that means you're including Westbrook in that trade, and then you're going to have to find a partner to take that contract in. I don't see that happening. So in the end, when this all plays out, with the Durant factor being he's not going to want to play this season with the Nets without Kyrie, I think in the end he's going to re-up. Maybe both sides kind of give a little bit, but I think in the end that's where this is headed.
I totally agree with you. We've talked about it as well. I think the one elephant in the room is Kyrie, and money doesn't mean shit to him. He's proven that. He left $17 million on the table last year during the opt-out. He also lost his shoe contract with Nike during the opt-out. So he doesn't care. He's got enough money to do what he wants to do, and sail around the flat Earth or whatever Kyrie wants to do these days. But I mean, there's rumors of him wanting to re-up with LeBron out in LA. I just, to your point, DJ, I don't see how this happens. You can tell me he wants to leave $17 million on the table, but he still got paid like $19 million last year, which isn't chump change. I can't see him just opting out and taking $6 million to go to the Lakers for 1 year, and also having to play with Westbrook at that point. Yeah. And I don't think the Lakers can put together enough of a package to pull him away. The only team that really could would be the Clippers, but I just don't see the Nets and KD, because you alluded to that. It doesn't matter what we think Marks and Cy and Nash want. It's all about what KD wants. And KD's re-up for 5 more years. He's going to want to play with his roll dog, and he's going to make sure that the two of them come together. I mean, unless they want to blow everything up and then they let Kyrie walk and then try to trade Durant somewhere as well. But I don't see how any of that happens.
Well, yeah. Well, I think that you're going to get a little bit of the Sharks kind of swimming around, they're scenting blood in the water regarding Durant, because I think if this Kyrie thing blows up, that's the next domino. Because even if you trade him and you bring in a 3-way scenario, you bring in Malcolm Brogdon and Miles Turner, as an example, where Westbrook kind of goes somewhere and you match up salary, Durant is not going to deal with that. He's going to want a team that's going to win him a championship, or at least compete for one. And if Kyrie is not a part of that, and you can't credibly replace him with an equal or close to equal talent, then you're going to have to decide if you are blowing this thing up, which, I mean, we're talking summer of 2019, this thing came together. I almost have whiplash in terms of how this thing has gone awry, especially with, a couple of years ago, how close they were to beating Milwaukee. But again, in the end, going back to where I think this is going, I don't think the Nets are going to go down the road of playing hardball with Kyrie to the point where it ruins their relationship with Durant. And I think he's the big factor here, more so than Kyrie.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And they finally have, between Curry and healthy Joe Harris, and if Patty Mills opts in, they finally have enough around. If everyone just stays healthy, this team is still probably on paper the team to beat next year, even going up against Boston. So,
right, and that's not even factoring in the Simmons factor.
Right. I was going to say, are we assuming a full season from Simmons at this point?
I think so.
I mean, it's tough to assume that. Yeah, but I think he'll play. And I think he's actually a really good fit Durant and with Kyrie in terms of his defense, his transition ability. I think he provides some things that they need, and maybe is a better fit long term than Harden. But I agree with you, Doug, that we're kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit in terms of his own reliability.
Well, I think he's got a whole off season now with the Nets staff to get himself in shape and get himself ready to play. I think now he's got Kyrie and Durant to hopefully he has Kyrie, but he's got Durant in his ear working with him. And to your point, DJ, like Harden was always a square peg in a round hole. He was the point two, and he's a fucking ball hog. And all he wanted to do was, it became an ISO heavy offense. And again, this year was an ISO heavy offense. But if you look at that offense in 2020 with D'Antoni running the helm and KD and Kyrie out running, and when they were all healthy, that team was ridiculous, right? So now you get a guy like Simmons out. All you want Simmons to do is run and finish, right? He doesn't need to shoot. And he can distribute. Yeah. He can be the point. He can have Kyrie playing at the two, but then he can still, run the post and they can run the floor. That team is scary if Simmons comes back, in my opinion. And then they.
Yeah, I mean, you can actually. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Well, I was going to say you can probably play Simmons comfortably at the 5 in a lot of lineups where you put him in the dunker spot and you don't have to worry about any of the issues that Philly had where you kind of needed that extra score. When you have Durant, you have Irving and whoever else they're going to kind of fill that roster with, a healthy Joe Harris or Curry, you don't need his offense, and you can kind of allow him to be kind of what he's good at, transition, getting the ball up and down the court and playing some of the best defense in the NBA. So yeah, I mean, on paper, this fit is really good. And I think in the end, we're probably going to see it. If I had a bet, I think Kyrie's going to re-sign. I think Simmons will probably be at least get the season going, and we'll see where it is. I would put the Nets as one of the top 3 teams in the East if Kyrie is back and Simmons is healthy.
Absolutely,
I think they're that good still.
Totally agree with everything you said there. So let's talk a little New York Knickerbockers. This is something that we don't really get into much here, but I know you're a fan of the team. You've been following them for a long time. So talk to me about the state of the Knicks. Where are they, and how do you see them shaping up with 2023 on the horizon?
Yeah, it's weird because they have, for the first time I think in a long time, there's a semblance of a plan where they've drafted well the last couple of years. They have a front office that seems stable. The issue is Julius Randle, and it's really hard, even when you're trying to prognosticate and where they're going to go in the draft. Like, is Julius Randle going to be on the team next year? And I think if he is on the team, it changes the whole dynamic of where they're going to go in the draft. What is Obi Toppin going to be as a player long term when his position is being held hostage, so to speak, by Randle and his contract? So I think you have that issue, and then you have all these other contracts that were signed in the offseason, Fournier, Burks, Noel, where there's a lot of scuttlebutt about them trying to get off those deals, free up some cap space, or just try to free up some spots for these young players to get minutes. So I feel comfortable with where they are. I like RJ Barrett as a prospect long term. I think that some of the young players are rotation pieces going forward. They don't have that star, and I think that's where you kind of run into an issue of where you're getting that star. And I think that's when we'll talk about the draft and what the Knicks want to do about trading up potentially, because they're going to have to make a swing, and bringing in a guy like Bradley Beal or Dame Lillard seems far-fetched. Maybe Donovan Mitchell is going to be an option down the road, but you're going to have to probably trade RJ Barrett to make that happen. So will they make a move draft night to try to move up? But I feel comfortable with where they are, although there's a lot of questions, especially with the Randle factor. Are they trying to trade him? Are they going to view him as a depreciated asset and try to rehab him a little bit? So certainly some questions, but overall, I like the young talent they have. They just need to consolidate and try to bring in that guy or 2 guys, because I don't think they have this. I don't think they have the second guy, to be honest.
So talk to me about Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau. How do you feel about the jobs they're doing? You alluded to the front office was stable, but do you think he's doing a good job? And how do you feel about Thibodeau? Flow on those 2 for a few.
Sure. So I think Rose, I would, if I had to grade him, I'd give him a B minus in terms of where he is. You can't deny the fact that the free agent signings last year from Kemba on down to the Randle extension were bad. I mean, there's no kind of sugarcoating that. Overall, I think the assistant coach kind of group that he brought in under Thibodeau was really good. And I think some of the guys they brought in the front office and the analytics department and the scouting department have held up really well. So I think overall, I think Rose has done a solid job. I think the pressure is starting to tighten a little bit. This is his coming up on his third season. And then when it comes to Thibodeau, I thought he was great his first year, but then you have this Thibodeau factor where he gets so much effort out of these teams to where the second, third, fourth year, you see them kind of taper off a little bit in terms of that effort, the amount of demand that he commands in terms of his roster. I think that you saw a little bit less of a defensive intensity last year. And I think that, he can wear on a team. And I think there's a factor of, can he relate to the modern player? And that's kind of the question I have. I think there's a push to have more of the former player be the head coach, and then you have the Thibodeau type guy be the lead assistant to where he can kind of control things from the bench. But in terms of relating to players, Nash, or Darvin Ham, who was just brought in, Tyronn Lue, who's one of the best head coaches in the NBA, I think relating to players is such a factor to where I don't know if Thibodeau is that guy long term. And I don't think he's the guy that gets him over the hump. I think Thibodeau's whole thing was create the credibility, get them to a point where they're getting 2 or 3 steps forward. But when they're competing for a championship, I don't think he's going to be the head coach of the roster.
Yeah, that's a great point. We saw that happen, not to switch it to hockey for a second. We saw that happen with Barry Trotz as well. Sometimes the message just gets
so demanding,
worn out. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know, are you guys hoping for a Steve Nash? I mean, I know Mike Nets fans weren't too impressed with his job, but I think I understand what you're saying in terms of the idea of that.
I think I think it's more the idea. Nash, I think that first year, I think he was great. I don't know about, the second year. He's in a tough spot. I think Nash probably had the toughest or one of the toughest head coaching jobs in the entire NBA.
It's just an absolute nightmare locker room. So.
Absolutely. The daily questions with Kyrie and everything. Right. But I think that the trend towards the former player is going to be something that the league is going to continue. And I think you're going to want the Thibodeau types to be on the bench, because they're so good with the X's and O's and kind of the game plan aspect of things. But I think there's, the modern player. I don't know if they're relating to a guy like Tom Thibodeau who didn't play, who just maybe doesn't have that same camaraderie. And I think that's something the Knicks are going to have to reckon with in the next year or so. So
that real quick before we get into your draft, do you see them moving any of these contracts, like maybe a Burks? Or
I think they're actively trying. Yeah. I do. I think Burks, they just reported that he had foot surgery after the season, so that's not ideal timing in terms of his trade value. But I think they are going to look to get off some of these deals. I don't know if that's going to be clearing cap space to make a run out of Jalen Brunson, or using them as incentive with a draft pick or two to try to move up in the draft. So I do think that even if you think those contracts are solid and you like these players, I think you're going to have to free up space. You can't have a roster where 10 guys deserve playing time. It's not going to work. It didn't work last year. It's not going to work this year. And you're going to bring in a draft pick likely to compete for minutes as well. So I think there's going to have to be a consolidation eventually. And the good thing about those contracts is they're in that range where you can easily package them to get a bigger name, whether that's Mitchell or Lillard. They're not toxic deals. They're probably net neutral. And I think they're easy to compile and create that salary matching situation.
Yeah, and
I do think they're moving off.
Yeah,
I do think they're going to move off.
And look, it's been a few years since as a Knicks fan, you've been able to say that, right? So,
right, where the contracts aren't terrible.
Well, except for that Kemba
contract. So,
yeah, I mean, it was only a 2-year deal. So, but the Julius one is the one that you're kind of like, they didn't have to do that. So that's the one you kind of want back, I think. You could have let him play out the year and allowed him to have a second year of that production before you kind of re-upped him or extended him. But it's not all bad, and I don't think his contract is so bad where you can't move him. Maybe you have to take a pick or two. But
so let's talk about Knicks.
It could be done.
Knicks are at what? 12th in the draft? So they're just out of the top 10.
11.
So ideally, if you could trade up,
yep.
What's your ideal package? How do you make that work?
Yeah, so here's the challenge is that to get a player that's worth trading up for, I think they're going to have to get to the fourth spot. And I think that at that spot, you're going to have Jaden Ivey available, because I think the top three are close to solidified in terms of Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, and Banchero going in that top three in some order. So I think Ivey will be there at 4, and then you have the Kings kind of making that pick. And do they want to bring in another lead combo guard to go with Fox and Mitchell, who they drafted in the first round last year? So I think there can be a trade in the works, but to go 7 spots, that is a lot of space to jump. And you're going to have to you're trading the 11, you're trading a future first, and you're probably going to need to trade a young player that the Kings like. So if that's Quickly or Toppin or Quentin Grimes, you're going to have to really incentivize the Kings to move down 7 spots. So it can be done. I think that from what I'm reading, we're talking about John Collins being a potential trade package for that 4th pick. So, John Collins is the borderline all-star. So I think you're looking at a package that might be too rich for the Knicks' blood in terms of getting in the running for Jaden Ivey, who might be a touch below that Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, kind of like game-changing, franchise-altering guard. I think he's really good, and I think he's a potential all-star. But I'm not sure he's the guy you trade your big, a massive package to try to get in the range.
Who then? You mentioned Julius Randle, and I watched enough Knicks games last year to know that he was very malcontent. He was not happy with a lot of what was going on. I don't know if it was if he was trying to be, the center of the offense, and they were kind of moving away from that. He wasn't happy with it, or what kind of changed. And then I guess maybe that's the first question: what changed last year? Because he was great the year before, and then what would you like to see done with him? You mentioned moving him. How do you see that happen?
Yeah, so the first part of the question, I think that 2 things changed. I think the first thing is his shooting, which went from, I'm talking about his shooting last year, it went from being a borderline mediocre shooter to being one of the best hard shot, mid-range, 3-point, step-back, pull-up jump shooters in the NBA. I mean, it was a massive improvement. And he wasn't the only guy that kind of saw that in these empty gym environments. So that's becoming something that we're looking at. Like, was there that inflation of production, that efficiency when you're shooting without people in the stands? So there's that factor. And because he came into this year or this past season and shot terribly, he shot more like the guy that he was in LA and in New Orleans. And I think that was kind of the first domino to fall, where his jump shooting, and he made a lot of hard, difficult, contested jump shots 2 years ago, and last year those shots didn't go in. And I think that created an atmosphere of like, all right, we just paid this guy a lot of money, we extended him, and now he's not performing. So I think that kind of started things. And then you do have a situation, as you alluded to, where the offense was different. And you added Kemba, who commands a lot of on-ball reps, a lot of pick and rolls, and Randle is not a guy that you're going to run a lot of roll man action with. And you had Fournier, and you have RJ Barrett, who you're trying to develop into that potential all-star level offensive player. So I think those things kind of you came together and created a situation where he really was a malcontent. And it wasn't like he was doing things that were overtly bad. He wasn't saying things out of turn in the media, but it was just the presence that he had, which was kind of always down, always upset. And it really made it hard to watch him because you just felt like he was miserable all the time. And I can't help but think that rubs off on a team that, generally speaking, has a lot of guys that seem to enjoy playing basketball, and he's the one that didn't, and it really stood out like a sore thumb. And you really, and to your second part, I think that if for this team to go forward, I don't know if he's the guy you want on your roster. And with that said, I don't think the Knicks are going to view him as a negative contract to where they're going to have to attach assets to move. So they're probably going to bring him back and try to rehab him a little bit. Hopefully his shot becomes a little more in line with his season a couple of years ago. Maybe he doesn't get to that point. Maybe he's 75% of that. And then you can maybe look to trade him, or he's a piece going forward. But if it was if I had my druthers, I would try to move him, because I think you want to free up space for Obi Toppin, who showed a lot last year in the last 20 or so games. And I don't know, depending on who they draft at number 11, if you're going to want such a ball dominant player in Julius Randle taking up so much usage on your team. So not a good year last year, and I'm trying to move.
I agree with you.
I'm trying to move that
him,
contract.
and I think everything you said is so spot on. He wasn't, bad with the media. He wasn't like doing stuff off the court that was ridiculous, but he just was pissed off all the time about everything. And it was like, and you could tell he just didn't like his usage. He didn't, he's trying to fight everybody on the court. And when he did have the ball, he reminded me of me and Doug were talking about the Nets a couple weeks ago about James Johnson. He reminded me, a much more talented version of James Johnson, but basically every time he got the ball, he was trying to do like a 360 spin, fadeaway jump shot. And I'm like, why are you doing that? You have 4 other guys on. You don't have to take the whole team on your shoulders and scream Kobe when he releases it. Like come on, man. Like play in your role. And I think he just lost sight of that and thought he had to be this leader of this team that maybe just didn't want to follow him anymore. I don't know if that was the vibe or if I was reading that wrong. But
yeah, I think there's something to that. And then that kind of speaks to the fact that if you're a team trying to trade for him, are you getting a guy that's going to acquiesce to a star that you already have in your roster, and a guy that's going to play a very specific defined role as a guy that's going to attack a closeout and maybe make some open jump shots. I don't know what he is as a kind of a role player, if he views himself as a number 1, number 2 option, because that kind of makes things a little more challenging if you're going to bring him into an organization. So it's a tough one. If I had to bet, I think he's still on the roster because I don't think they're going to want to trade him when the value is so low. But they're definitely thinking about moving him, and it makes that, going back to the first question, it makes that extension just an unforced error. Didn't need to happen, and it's something they're gonna have to figure out how to.
So let's get into your. Let's do top 11. Let's see your top 11 prospects and how you think, kind of mock draft wise, where these guys are going for the audience.
Yeah, I've seen Smith, I've seen Holmgren. Who's your number 1?
Yeah, so I've gone back and forth, and just to kind of give you an overview, I said this draft is really weird, I think, at the start, and I've really been following it since 2016, and this is the first year where it's really hard to get a read on the talent in this draft. Luckily, the first 4 I think are pretty solidified, and I think Holmgren, Jabari Smith, Banchero, and Ivy have kind of solidified into that top 4.
It's kind of weird though. It's 3 bigs though at the top, especially the way today's game's played. So
yeah, well, I think that's a good point. I think Holmgren especially, I have a little trouble with him going number 1 because I don't know if he can be a center long term because of the frame, and I don't know if you're going to want to bring in a power forward at his size where you're going to have to pair him with more of a bruising big center, because I think that limits you in the playoffs to where teams are going small. And I watched a lot of Holmgren in terms of switchability, and he really struggled on the perimeter. There's a lot of things that he's really great at. He's a incredible shot blocker. He's going to be a rim protector in the realm of Rudy Gobert. That's how good he is. His instincts are incredible. He is tougher than you think. Even though he is slight, he is really good at finishing around the basket, and part of that is he responds well to contact, and he goes through guys a little more than you would imagine, and then he's a really good shooter. So I think that you can do some things with him. I just don't know if he's an offensive hub. I think he's more of a tertiary third option, and I think the defensive concerns come up when you have to then pair him with a center that's going to command 20, 25 minutes, and that just makes your roster a little more murky. So I think Jabari Smith's going number 1. If I had to, I think all the tea leaves are kind of pointing that direction to Orlando. Elite shooter. He doesn't have any semblance of playmaking or ball handling. He is just one of the most beautiful contested jump shooters that we've probably seen in the draft since Durant, in terms of his high release point, in terms of the shot making he can do in the mid range. And he has a motor defensively and a versatility to where you can probably guard him 2 through 5 against some smaller centers. And I think he's just a super safe option. I think that I would take Banchero ahead of him if I had to pick. I think he's a little more versatile offensively, and he's a dynamic playmaker, and he's a really good ball handler. But I think the Magic are going to go with Smith. I think the shooting is a good fit there. And I just think he provides such an offensive juice for them right off the bat. I just question the upside long term because his ball handling, playmaking capabilities are so limited right now. And those are things that I have a harder time projecting out as areas of improvement versus a guy that needs to improve a jump shot, which I think is a little more easy to improve as you go through the NBA.
That's a great point. I watched at least 3 or 4 Duke games this year, especially when they were playing the Qs, and I did notice that Banchero could actually bring the ball up the court.
And you can run pick and roll with him.
Right.
You can do some things. Yeah.
And I mean the shooting touch wasn't there this season, but you can fix that, right? So.
Yeah, well, that's the weird thing about him is like I heard someone mention that he reminds them of a late career Blake Griffin, kind of the Detroit version where he was not the elite athlete anymore, but he had that passing ability. He can make a jump shot, and he was so kind of crafty in the paint. The issue with Banchero is the ball doesn't go in quite as much as you want. He's not a great 3-point shooter. He's not a great foul shooter, and his finishing can be a little leaves a little bit to be desired. So I think that part of it is a question, but I just love his playmaking ability. And you can have a guy at 6'10", 250 with his ball handling. I mean, we're talking about 2 or 3 guys over the past decade or so that kind of have that size, strength, ball handling capabilities. So to me, he's your best offensive package, and the only guy I see that could be a true offensive hub, because I think you need that playmaking capability, that ball handling to really get to that level.
So,
yeah, that's good stuff. So you would actually take him first of all overall.
I would. Wow. Yeah, it's close. I mean, again, these 4 guys to me are kind of bunched in the same tier, and it's just a matter of eye of the beholder, who your preference is. If and when they take Jabari Smith, I'm not going to kill them for it. I think he's a credible number 1 pick. I don't know if he's a great historic number 1 pick, but he's perfectly defensible, and as is Holmgren. I think that he did so much as a dominant center in college. I think you can project him to be elite rim protector, a great defender, and a guy that can make jump shots and run some. He can dive to the rim. So I think there's some things with him that makes him a worthy number 1 pick, and I think Jaden Ivey too, just as a dominant rim runner, a guy that can get to the rim. He's the only one guy in this draft that can get to the rim consistently without a screen, and right. I think that is such a valuable option to have to kind of bend your defense. He's the guy that I think fits perfectly with the Knicks if they were to trade up, but there's a lot of good players in that top 4, and then you have like this cliff where you have a few other guys that are credible, maybe long-term starters, maybe long-term potential all-stars, and then once you get to like 8 or 9, there's another cliff, and I think you're seeing a lot of teams considering trading out of their late lottery picks, maybe getting a player that can help them today, a veteran like Malcolm Brogdon, or maybe rolling those picks over to 2023 where the talent is much better, because I think it's a real struggle to find value in that like 11, 10 to maybe 18 range.
Well, yeah, you actually sniped my question on Ivy. So you would be thrilled if the Knicks jumped up. I mean, depending on the cost, but
depending on the cost,
it sounds like that's exactly what they need.
It is, because they don't have, RJ Barrett gets to the rim a lot, but he needs a screen every single time. So to have a guy that can get to the rim with one of the best first steps you're going to find. I mean, he's going to go into the NBA and he's going to be a 99 percentile athlete. His ball handling is not great. Neither is Ja Morant, but they're so explosive, and he's much bigger than Ja. I mean, he's a legit 6'4" with like a 6'9" wingspan, and he's well built. He's thick throughout, and he's a monster going to the basket. And I think if the shooting continues to improve, he went from a bad shooter his freshman year to a pretty decent one his sophomore year. If you project that as a continued improvement, then he could be a guy that averages 22, 23 points a game, maybe makes an all-star team, and is a legit second option on a really good team. And, it's not an amazing turn of events when you're picking it at 4, but if you're going to get a guy that's going to threaten to make some all-star teams, I think you have to consider that, and he's just a perfect fit for what the Knicks lack right now.
All right, nice. So you talked about kind of the drop-off after that.
Yeah.
Who are your guys in the 5 to 8? You like Sharp? Yeah. You like Daniels? Who you got?
Yeah, so I think Shaedon Sharp he's the mystery man. He was signed on to go to Kentucky, never played there. It's really hard to find credible video on him. There's some high school stuff available, but it's, competition wise, it's not great, obviously. And, it was a question mark regarding how his effort level, and you don't kind of know where that's coming from, if that's, if he was told maybe to tamp things down a little bit. But in terms of his talent level, I mean, you start with a 6'6" frame with a 6'11" wingspan, and he's a perfect shooting guard size for the modern NBA. He is a monster 2-foot leaper. He's not great going off 1 foot, but if you put him in the dunker spot, he had a few dunks where he is going off 2, and he can get up there and catch some lobs that you would think would be more assigned to like a power forward center. I mean, he is a explosive leaper off 2 feet. He's great in transition. And the thing that really stands out for me is while he didn't shoot a great percentage, he took a lot of tough shots and he made a lot of tough shots. And I think if you bring his kind of shooting profile down, he's more of a catch and shoot guy at the start, and he figures out that mid-range pull-up situation. I said on Twitter that he has the highest upside as a shooter in the draft, and not in terms just as a catch and shoot guy, but just the whole package of step backs, rhythm shooting, movement shooting, off screen. I think he can kind of do it all, and I think you project him to be a great shooter who has the tools at least to be a good defensive player. We don't know because you never really want to judge defense in the high school setting. It's just very tough to do. But he would be the guy that's right in that next range after Ivy, as the one I'm looking at as a swing potentially for an all-star, because I think that, for a lot of teams, that might make the most sense. Try to, he might bust out and may never play, many minutes in the NBA. We don't know because we don't have a lot of video and scouting options on him, but I think he's the guy that you can take a swing for and maybe find yourself a multiple all-star. So I really like him. And then you have a guy like Keegan Murray and Ben Mathurin who are more, I think, ready-made to contribute right away. And I think Murray especially, he can come in probably tomorrow and make catch-and-shoot jump shots.
Yeah, it seems like a safe pick, right?
Very safe pick, but you wonder, that's been assigned to him, the safe thing for a while. But if you watch him, he is so good in transition and kind of the grab and go game, and he can do a little bit defensively to where you might be a guy that you can play as a small ball 5 and help protect the rim a little bit. There might be a little more upside than we're giving him credit for, but I think the floor is really high. And I think when you're talking about a draft that has some question marks after the first 4, to get a guy that you're going to feel confident is going to be a starter for the next 10 years. I think there's value there.
Let me ask you this.
Absolutely. Who are you favoring?
Let me ask you this, DJ.
Sorry,
who are you hoping that the Knicks pick if they stay put at 11? And give us a couple sleepers. Guys like, late round, second round guys that no one, who are your favorites?
Who are your favorites?
Is going to be the guy that breaks out?
Yeah, so well, your first question was on the Knicks if they stay put. If they stay at 11, I think AJ Griffin seems to be the guy that will be available. And to me, the shooting upside for him is so good, even if there are concerns about some injuries in high school and whether or not his athleticism is ever going to return to what he was before he got to Duke. I think he's such an elite shooting prospect to where I find it hard to believe he's going to be terrible. And I think that a guy that even if you're sticking him in the corner and he's making 50% of his corner threes, there's going to be value there. There's a lot of questions regarding his agility, his feet, he seems to have really tight hips. So him getting in and out of stances seems to be a challenge, but maybe getting him into an NBA training program, you work on that flexibility. I don't know how much yoga they're doing at Duke, but the Knicks have actually added that aspect to their training facility, and I think that helped RJ Barrett a lot, and just in terms of the flexibility pieces to it, Obi Toppin as well. So he's the guy that if the Knicks are staying at 11, which I do have questions whether or not they are going to stay at 11, I think he's a safe pick to come in and make shots right away, and maybe there is some upside if the athleticism kind of reverts back to his pre-Duke days. And then you asked about some sleepers. This is a draft where I think you can get guys in the late first, kind of early second, to where that you can get a rotation player. So you're going to probably see a lot of movement. Maybe some teams like the Nets trying to get in and buying a pick late in the first round if they really like a guy. There's Josh Minnow of he's in Memphis. He didn't play a lot. He's a big wing type player. I watched Jalen Duren a lot, and he's their center prospect, and he might go in the first 13, 14 picks. But Minnow kept standing out as like this super athlete with like he's 6'9" with like a 7-foot wingspan. It's all athleticism, it's all transition, it's all running and dunking. But if you can figure out a way to kind of hone in and improve that shooting, then you might have a guy that's in 5 years is one of the top 10 players in this draft. So if you're looking in that late first, early second, he's a name I keep going back to. Caleb Houston out of Michigan didn't have a great rookie freshman year at Michigan, but he's 6'8" and he can shoot the lights out. And Alondas Williams, Wake Forest, he was like their pseudo point guard. He's 6'5", he's huge. One of the best in the entire draft in terms of getting to the rim and finishing. And he's one of the best passers in the draft. And the thing with him is that his shooting is a major question. But again, if that's the skill you're trying to improve, guys have come along and become credible shooters to where you just want to, the defense is going to have to honor you. And I think if he gets there, then you might have a starter long term. So those are three guys. There's plenty more. I actually think there's a lot of value late in the first, early second in this draft after you get at, around, past pick 20. So yeah, if you're a team and you want to just bring in talent, some swings, and see if you can get a star out of this thing, I think that there's going to be some excitement late in the first, early in the second round.
Yeah, totally. I feel like this is going to be one where we look back in like 5 years, and there's going to be some absolute gems and then some total busts like all over the place.
It's definitely going to be fun, and I do think, to your point, that
it will be
the end of the first is where you will see Sean Marks pony up the $3 million to go get himself a pick, because like you said, a lot of this draft is a kind of a crap. I mean, they're all crapshoots, right? But this one after pick 5-6 is kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah.
So they'll take some swings, and they could use a 3-and-D guy and then add to that on that team. So, all right, well, gents, this has been awesome. DJ, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you on. First guest, look.
Yeah, absolutely. I had more questions for you, but you're right. We're a little bit out of time. We could do this all day.
Yeah, I love it, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you so much.
Dougie, what do you got to say?
Oh, man, I don't know if you guys saw this right before we recorded, but NFL lost kind of a legend today via Condias Syracuse. Obviously a sideline reporter for Fox, but pretty damn good defensive lineman in his own right. So.
Yeah, that 2000 defense was one of the greatest of all time. Absolutely. I'm a Giant fan, so I remember it well. And he was part of it. He was a big part of that.
Yeah, we won't talk about that Super Bowl, man.
No, and he pancaked Rich Gannon, I think. Injured him. They beat Oakland in the playoffs, and then obviously went on to beat the Giants handily in the Super Bowl. So
roughed up Kerry Collins.
Rest in peace. He was a great guy.
He was.
And one of the funniest guys in the history of the NFL.
Absolutely, just a cut up.
All right, guys, and audience, we will see you next week.
Produced by Heartcast Media.